So I just want to welcome everyone who has come to this discussion for tonight. This is actually our last Black History celebration webinar, and I'm so happy for those that were able to attend. Again, this will all be recorded, and we will be posting them on YouTube. So if you want to share with your friends and family, we will be posting it on YouTube shortly, and we will be posting this actually on our Instagram, so you're able to share the link. So let's begin. So again, everyone, welcome to the Kujenga Wellness Black History Celebration webinar series. If you don't know who we are a Black-led grassroots project designed to innovate and support our community through resources for child care, youth, adults, and families in the Durham region. And we strive to build our community foundation, promote holistic teaching and education, and promote mental health and healing from trauma. And if you're interested in any of our future events, we do have some upcoming events. We have Queens Unite, which happens weekly. We also in March have support groups. One is called Unpacking Intergenerational Experiences. Our following support group is Co-Parenting Information Series that happens every Saturday at 10 a.m. And last but not least, we have a Black Mental Health Day panel discussion on March 7th at 6:30 p.m. And for future reference, we are actually planning the Kujenga Wellness Conference and Gala and Family Fair. It's going to be our premier event and our first in-person event. We pray that we could still have in-person events from now into the future. And that will be happening April 22nd and 23rd in 2023. So you could save the date on that. And if you want to follow us, please follow us on Facebook at Kujenga Wellness Project, on Instagram at Kujenga Wellness, and you can also follow us at, or look for more information at www.kujengafamily.org.
Didn't hear any of the audio.
That's okay. It's just normal music, nothing copywritten.
Okay.
So next, we want to introduce you all to our host, John Jack. He is our program coordinator here at Kujenga Wellness. You want to say what's up to everyone, John?
Hey, hello. Good night, everyone.
And today we will be talking about music and mental health with A. Harmony, MC, writer, and radio personality at CBC Music, as well as talking about being a Black, gay, single dad with Andre Chow Leong, who is a content creator. So before we get started, we're going to just do our land acknowledgement. So Kujenga Wellness Project acknowledges the land and people of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation. We are thankful to be welcomed on these lands in friendship. The lands we are situated on are covered under the Williams Treaties and the traditional territory of the Mississauga, a branch of the Great Anishinaabe Nation, including Algonquin, Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi. These lands remain home to a number of Indigenous nations and people. We acknowledge this land out of respect for the Indigenous nations who have cared for Turtle Island, also called North America, from before the arrival of settler peoples until this day. Most importantly, we remember the history of these lands has been tainted by poor treatment and the lack of friendship with the First Nations who call them home. This history is something we are all affected by, as we are all treaty people in Canada. We all have a shared history to reflect on and each of us is affected by this history in different ways. Our past defines our present, but if we move forward as friends and allies, then it does not have to define our future. So as we begin, let us pause for a moment to remember our ancestral roots and the enslaved African people that were stolen from their homelands and traveled through the transatlantic route to build on lands we know as North America. Let us honor the enslaved people who built this nation. Let us recognize the histories of Ontario and across Canada as complicit with racism of white supremacy. We recognize that these difficult histories persist in present day racial realities. We commit to dismantling racism in all spaces, and we invite you to come together with us to create change. So let's just take a moment of silence. And now we're gonna play Lift Every Voice and Sing, which is the national Black anthem. Please let me know if you could hear any sound. If not, then I could start it over.
No
Can you hear
sound.
sound? No?
No.
Okay, let's try this again. Let me try again.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the faith that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun, a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Hello, everyone. I'm Kiara Sheard, and I would like to congratulate National President Derek Johnson, Chairman Leon.
You're muted, Tasia.
Am I muted still?
Not anymore. You're good to go.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
Yeah, that was great.
Okay, so now I'm going to pass it on to John Jack, who is going to present our first speaker.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for the wonderful intro, Tasia. And thank you for introing both of our exciting guests this evening. Starting with A Harmony. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good.
Good.
And Andre, how are you?
I'm doing wonderful.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, the both of you, for joining us this evening. It's wonderful to be able to have these conversations just in regards to music and mental health, because sometimes they could complement each other. Starting with A Harmony. So the music industry. And that's such a vague thing to say, but the music industry has always been this very complex thing to take part in. There's so much moving pieces. There's so much uncertainties, and just being able to navigate yourself through the music industry to make sure that one, you're not being fooled by anyone, you're not being cheated, and someone's truly looking out for you so you can succeed and do the things that you need to do. For you, how did you get into the music industry?
Well, just as you described, the music industry is very complex. And so this answer has no one straight path. I would say in university, I think that's where I got my informal start. I was involved in a lot of extracurricular school clubs and things like that. And one of my jobs was to book talent and book artists to come and perform at our school. And this was around like the golden era, right before artists like Drake and Division and DJ Future and all of that. Before they really blew up, I was getting a chance to actually interface with them and book them to come to our school and get like up and close personal time with them. So that was like the informal start. And I was blogging at the same time before blogging was really a thing. I was a recording artist myself at the time. After university, when I kind of got an informal taste of the music industry, I then went to the Harris Institute for the Arts, where I studied arts management and arts business, which I think really helped me, as you were discussing, just making sure that you're not cheated in the industry or not, frequenting the wrong corners. Getting an education in music business really helped. From there, it was a winding road. I interned at a music publisher for a while. Like I said, I got into recording and performing myself for a while. I did digital communications for the Brooklyn Hip Hop Festival for 2 cycles. And from there, it just kept going. I recorded an album with 2 artists in Toronto named Phoenix Pagliacci and Deja SB. Deja is out of here now. You can see their posters, or their billboards, sorry, downtown Toronto now. They're out of here. But I recorded an album with them, and from there decided I love the creative aspect of music, but I didn't like any of the public facing stuff. I don't like performing. I don't like doing interviews, not like this, but like I don't like doing artist interviews or magazine shoots or things like that. It wasn't for me. So I pivoted to music journalism from there. Like I said, I'd been blogging kind of informally, and I pivoted into writing for Exclaim, the national music magazine here in Canada. I think it's the last one left. And from there, started adjudicating different awards, different grants, etc. And then that led me to commentary and led me to broadcasting. I now host Marvin's Room on CBC Music. It's an R&B radio show. So winding road. I've been in all corners of the music industry, behind the scenes, in front of the mic, from administration to performance and everything in between. And now I am broadcasting.
Okay, see, that's a wonderful collage of things that you were involved with. Being part of the journalism side, would you say that allowed you to dig a little bit deeper because it allowed you to do some research and to understand certain dynamics of the music industry?
Absolutely. I would say all of my experience from, being a talent promoter to being a performer myself to learning the ins and outs of the business before I actually started to work in it myself, and then pivoting from artist to journalist. All of that has given me a unique perspective, and I definitely bring that to the journalism. I was always interested in kind of researching and learning more about the industry, and that's one of the reasons why I bounced around from place to place within the industry. But I get to take that curiosity to journalism for sure, and get to bring that artist perspective as well. So when I'm interviewing artists, I'm having a discussion with them from journalist to artist, but also from artist to artist. And I think that adds a good perspective to my journalism.
Okay. Did you ever think of starting your own record label?
I did. When I was young, I wanted to be, when I was little, I wanted to be the next Diddy. Like that was one of my nicknames when I was growing up. I thought I was going to like run my own Bad Boy Records. Once I actually got into the education side and started learning how the industry works, that kind of turned me off of working at a record label or owning my own or starting my own and pivoting into artist management and that kind of thing. After I started to learn about it, I was like, I don't think that's the lane for me. But yes, when I was a kid, I was like a mini mogul in the making.
I could see that, absolutely. Did you see equity in the music industry, in the media industry, music industry?
So it depends on what level of the industry you're operating within. And I, like I said, came up in this really unique time in the music industry where we were pivoting from, record labels and kind of the more formal way of making music to this informal market of social media and that direct to consumer relationship that we see on the internet. So I was coming up right in the middle of those two things. I think taking the corporate hand out of things and being able to create that direct to consumer market created more equity in the industry where there was none. But I have found as I pivot into a more corporate space, they're still lacking as far as equity is concerned, especially as you climb up the chain at some of the record labels or networks, publications, et cetera. You look at the masthead and the higher up you go in the chain, it's usually more white and more male. So yes and no, like yes on the informal side of things where people are doing it themselves. And I think that direct to consumer market that has been created over the past, let's say 10 to 15 years was born out of necessity. It was born out of the fact that there weren't a lot of different kinds of people at positions of power in these labels and managing artists, et cetera. So yes, I'm seeing it there. I'm seeing kind of people forge paths and create a more equitable space kind of outside of corporate spaces, but in the corporate world, I think there's still some work to be done.
I think that's very interesting, especially with the music that is pumped out of Canada, which is very culturally diverse, that it doesn't reflect those who are behind the scenes responsible for making some of those decisions. And you question that if you don't have this cultural diversity or lens within the corporate side, are some of those decisions fair, and are some of those decisions biased, right?
Right. I think it's smart to question what decisions are being made or who is making decisions. But what I can say is, since we've kind of pivoted to this direct to consumer market, the consumer really is king in the music industry. And I find now we are the ones telling the labels who to sign, and we are the ones telling the networks who to air. Like our voice is more powerful than it ever has been. So it's interesting because now certain execs are kind of forced or given no choice but to make more equitable decisions because that's what we want to see. So that's been the beautiful thing in terms of how the landscape has changed over the past decade or so, is that our voice, because of social media, because of the internet, and because of the fact that labels can see feedback like instantly as soon as an artist drops or as soon as a video comes out, et cetera, they are in reactive mode now. They're no longer telling us what to like or telling us what to listen to or telling us who to elevate. We have that power. And so, it's become an interesting, it's been an interesting change over the past, I'd say 10 to 15 years in that regard.
Yes, because I can imagine the era that we're from, when you were going into the music industry, you relied on your A&R representative to support you with creating your visibility and putting together your EPKs and electronic press kits and all that stuff, right?
Right. Like I think the A&R, and it's not to say that the role of the A&R isn't still important, but I think the talent scout aspect of A&R that everybody is more familiar with, it played a much bigger role in the industry of old. And it's interesting because so when I enrolled at Harris, you have to take like an entrance interview with the director of the program before they let you in, because they want to figure out whether you're there because you have stars in your eyes and you just want to mingle with celebrities and, like, you know, champagne and money flying from the sky, or whether
Mhm.
you are actually interested in forging a business path in this industry, because it's not easy and you really do need a thick skin, and, you know, money and things like that aren't going to come to you for a long time. So they try to separate those who are really serious about forging a career with those who are just in it, you know, to meet celebrities and get backstage passes and that kind of thing. So in
Yeah.
the interview, the director of the program had asked me, you know, what's your career goal after this? Like, where do you see yourself after school, after graduation? And I said, I want to be an A&R. This was still me thinking like young Diddy, I was gonna come in and change the game. And he said, you know, there's nothing wrong with that, but you should know that there's only 3 A&Rs in Canada right now who are actually making moves, and none of them are Black and none of them are women. So he wasn't saying it to discourage me, but he was just giving me a reality check. And it's not to say that I couldn't have gone in that path or that direction if I wanted to, but he was kind of opening my eyes to how homogenous it was at that level.
Yes.
So that is one of the things that changed my mind about following A&R as a career path. And it's interesting that I did that, because it's not to say that they're obsolete, but they are no longer the ones dictating who's going to be the next big thing. So
Yes.
not to say that career is dead, but I'm kind of glad that I didn't pursue it.
Yes, absolutely. No, thank you for sharing that. Um, so what were some of the issues you personally face transitioning through these spaces?
Hmm. Um, you know, no one glaring issue kind of comes to mind, but, you know, I remember as far back as booking talent in school, we couldn't get some of our artists into some of the most popular venues in the city because they were worried about the type of element that a rapper or a Black singer or a diverse singer would bring to their establishment. They were very homogenous in that space as well. And like I said, just kind of sitting at boardroom tables or sitting in executive meetings and not seeing a lot of people who look like me at the meetings, that kind of thing. And it's not to say that just because like one issue isn't coming to mind in terms of me personally being held back doesn't mean that there isn't an invisible kind of ceiling around me, or certain opinions, or me being pigeonholed in certain ways. And I'd say that's not just me. I think that's an effect that you see across the industry.
Yeah.
So there's no one issue that stands out, but there are issues, and they don't just affect me personally.
Okay, that makes sense. Do you find that, was there anything within your journey that affected your, I don't want to say mental health, I guess just your well-being?
Hmm. So not for me personally, but I will say that it is a lot of work to maintain
Mhm.
mental wellness when you're working in an industry like the music industry, especially. So I talk a lot about that pivot from, you know, corporate spaces to this kind of do-it-yourself environment that we're in now. That
Yes.
can be a really grueling space if you're relying on, you know, a social media following and constantly being online and being on and performing all of the time. That can take a toll on your mental health. So for me, things like, you know, being real with myself and kind of pivoting out of performing, because I knew that wasn't the space that I wanted to be in. I didn't want to give that much of myself to a public. So I kind of took a step back from that. And that was a way that I shield my mental health. Or, you know, if you look on my social media, I am never online. Like, I am a
Mhm.
lurker, but I don't really post. And, you know,
Mhm.
people have said, you know, if you want to make it in this industry, you got to be on all the time. And I have put my foot down and said, no, like, I'm not going to be that person who's always on. Or, you know, small things like not checking my email after 7 o'clock, or not answering texts from my producer after a certain hour because I guard my me time. So I can't say that there's been anything that's taken a toll on my mental wellness, but it has been work for me to look out for things that could have taken a toll and manage them before they get there.
Yes, I like that you said that, because I heard the same thing in regards to, in order for you to build your followers, that you have to be consistent and always be present,
Hmm.
and that is a great commitment.
Hmm.
I don't think some people really understand the dedication and time of being committed to that, and
Right.
and to maintain it.
And there are certainly ways to maintain your presence and to leverage social media to benefit your career without giving all of yourself away. There is a way to set digital boundaries, and I think they're very important. I think, a lot of the artists I see today, I see a mix. I see some who kind of fall into it and get lost in the trap and are constantly churning out content, and we sometimes see them unraveling on social media, but I see other artists who are really good at setting boundaries. So, Ari Lennox, every couple of weeks, she will say, you know what, I'm tired of you guys. Like, you are, damaging my mental health and I don't feel good in this space and I'm deleting all of my accounts. She does it every couple of weeks and people will make fun of her for it, but I commend her for taking a step back anytime she feels she needs to. And it doesn't affect her fan base in terms of, people not listening to her music anymore. It doesn't affect her as much as people say it does if you step back from the spotlight for a couple of minutes. You look at artists like The Weeknd and Kendrick Lamar, who maybe 10, 12 years ago were really leveraging social media and made a following for themselves in terms of being really accessible or making their music accessible. I remember back in the day before like IG Live was a thing, Kendrick used to go on this ancient platform called Ustream that doesn't exist anymore and like do live listening sessions with his fans and take real feedback on his music. I remember that's how he dropped the Section 80 mixtape before he really took off. So
Yes.
there was a period where they were leveraging those tools, but now like we never see Kendrick online. He is always in the shadows. And, once he got to a certain level, he kind of retreated and built a bit of a shield around himself. Same thing with The Weeknd. We only access these artists when they allow us to. And again, it doesn't affect their fan base. Damn never left the chart since it debuted and it's been years now. And if Kendrick drops tomorrow, we'll drop everything and listen to his music. So I think it's really important to set digital boundaries and be aware of that. There's a way to leverage those tools and make them work for you, but you should never be working for these tools.
Interesting. I like that you said that. When you brought up the artist name, Ari Lennox, what came to my mind also was Summer Walker.
Yep.
And I remember when she decided to cancel like all of her tours.
Yep.
And that's money because
yeah,
nowadays it's not like you're making money off of downloads and stuff like that.
right.
You're touring to sustain your wealth.
Right. Yep.
And she took it upon herself to say, you know what? I am not well.
Yeah.
And it makes no sense for me to come and see you if I'm not well. So guess what? I'm
Exactly.
not coming to see you.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow,
Yeah.
that's huge.
And I commend Summer Walker. Roddy Ricch did the same thing recently. I think a song of his leaked and it was getting pretty bad feedback online and that was affecting him. And so he just took a step back and deleted all his accounts. And I commend anyone who can do that, especially because the advice that they're getting or the popular opinion is you always have to be on. And if you want to make it, if you want to build a following, you have to be online all the time and be consistent and you always got to be available and accessible. Like accessibility has become such an important factor in introducing artists to the world. And a lot of fans expect that now. And I think it's really commendable for somebody to see all of that and still say, nope, this doesn't work for me. I don't mind, sharing my music with you, et cetera, but I need to set some boundaries. And I think, going back to what you said earlier about the music industry, being a place where you could be easily tricked or taken advantage of, no one else is going to look out for you the way that you will. So it's up to the artist as best as they can to put their foot down. And I look at an artist like Kanye West, for instance, who, we have all seen him in the public in times of crisis.
Yes.
And, you'll see things like instead of, his team kind of incubating him and just having him take a step back and take care of himself, they'll get him interviews in GQ. And then there it is on the record forevermore, him having a moment of crisis and that being on the record. And that's the Kanye that we get, or that's how they're representing him. And again, that's the symptom of a lot of yes men around you who don't really have your best interest at heart. So I really commend the Aries and the Summers and the Roddy Ricch, et cetera, even if it's an unpopular move and even if people tease them for it, anytime they feel like I've had enough or I need to take a step back or I need to just take a break and take a breather, they do it. And that is how you deliver the best art, right? Is when you are in a space of wellness.
Space of wellness, yes. And I think just to echo on what you were saying there too, Tyrese, right,
Mhm.
where he was in a position of crying out for help in
Yeah,
terms of his own dynamics and situation, but
yeah,
instead it was turned into something else of weakness, right?
right, right.
And you're right.
Absolutely.
You're right. You do need to be surrounded by people who need to look out for your best interests, or you have to make sure that you do that for yourself.
Yeah.
Um, Moving into this next question here, in regards to, do you see playing music, especially today, as something positive or negative when it comes to a person's mental health?
Yeah, it really depends on what type of music you're consuming. And I think that's true of anything that we consume, not just food or water. Like we often think of consumption as like that type of physical sustenance, but the type of media that we're consuming, the type of music that we listen to, the type of books that we read, or even the corners of the internet that we frequent, all of those have an effect on our bodies and our minds the same way that food and sleep and water and exercise do. So music can be a good thing for your mental health, and it can also be bad depending on what type of music you're consuming, what your headspace is at, and what your mental capacity for maybe separating yourself from some of the messages that you're absorbing is. There are some days I love hip hop. That's my first love. That was, what brought me to the music industry in the first place. And, I'll be the first to admit I love hip hop, but a lot of that messaging isn't very kind to me as a Black woman. And there are days where I can absorb those messages and enjoy the music, but separate myself from it. And there are days where that's not the best thing for me to listen to. And so I'll pivot to, Moonchild or something a little bit more mellow, Laura Mavula or something like that when I kind of need to be reinforced. So yeah, it can be a good thing or a bad thing depending on where your own head is and the type of music that you're absorbing or listening to.
I kind of laughed when you said Moonchild because I thought I was the only one that listens to her.
No, no, I love them. Their album, a new album just came out the other day, and I can't stop playing it. I love Moonchild. Yeah,
And I find it interesting because her vocals are very monotone,
yeah,
but they dance.
yeah, yep, yep,
It's
and
really
very,
interesting.
very soothing, very mellow. I just reviewed their most recent album, and that was my general sentiment: is that it's very soothing. It's the perfect lazy Sunday album. It's the type of album you play, like when you want to sleep, but in the best way. It doesn't put you to sleep. It lulls you there, and I
Yes.
love the features on that one too. Layla Hathaway's voice. I compared. So like the lead singer in Moonchild to Layla Hathaway, it was like cotton candy and chocolate. One is light and fluffy and sweet. One is dark and rich and just warm. And both of them together is like the perfect dessert. So yeah, I
Well
love, I
said.
love
I
Moonchild. Yeah,
I do not feel alone now. Thank you.
good. No, you're not alone. I love that home.
Wow. Um, what are some types of music or artists that you would recommend for, as we were just talking? And what?
To like reinforce you. So Moonchild, like I said, because they're nice and mellow, and they're not too exciting or excitable. Or I like Looney a lot. That's another laid back artist that I like. Kronbin, that's how you pronounce that one. They just came out with a new album with Leon Bridges. I really like their music as well.
Yes.
The internet. I'm like firmly in the alt R&B space when it comes to like things I want to mellow out to, like Robert Glasper maybe for some jazz.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there are tons of artists. Money Long, I like what she's doing lately. There's an artist called Brim Lynn. I think he's from Atlanta. He's got some really great stuff too. So there's lots of good music if you want to just mellow out or need to feel reinforced.
I like that. Yes. Though those every artist that you mentioned there, just they have their own quality in terms of how they deliver their
Yeah,
style. And
yeah.
it's very unique because
Mhm.
nowadays when you listen to music, sometimes there's a set template,
Yeah.
especially in terms of like current hip hop. Not to throw shade on current hip hop, but I'm old school, so I am going to throw shade. But whatever. So so when you hear some of this stuff, it could be a little bit redundant, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and there's something to say about um, content, lyricism, sustenance, and just
Mhm.
delivery, amalgamating all those things together and just
Mhm.
putting it in this wonderful recipe for you to really digest.
Yeah, for me, it's all about time and place and context, right? Like I love hip hop just as much as I love that mellow alt R&B. It just depends on my mood and what I'm feeling. If I want to feel motivated or I'm like in making money, mini mogul mode, I love to listen to like some nice trap or some hip hop or whatever to get me motivated and going. Or I like something a little more high octane if I'm exercising, that kind of thing. So there is space for it all. I think
Mm,
the thing is just again going with your mood and knowing what you can handle and when. Like, you know, if I'm feeling really down or if I want to cry or want to release some emotion, I'll throw on Moses Sumney or Solange or the Adele album. If I want to just have a nice cleansing cry, you know what I'm saying? There's space for it all. So
mhm.
yeah, hip hop has its place, and I understand what you're saying in terms of some of the messaging maybe not being the most savory, and you know, you may not
Yes.
want to listen to that in all spaces. But for me, it's all about context and letting your own mood dictate what music you take in.
Yes. No, I absolutely agree with what you're saying. I have a question here.
Mhm.
It says, A Harmony, do you have a Spotify playlist?
I do have Spotify playlists. I can share some. I haven't made a specific mellow one, but I can. And yeah, I haven't. I have one I made a couple years ago called Barefoot Music. A friend of mine had asked me. He said very specifically, I want music for like if I just feel like being barefoot in the house with my plants. And so I shared that with him. I can share it with everybody here as well, and make something new for people to listen to. Absolutely.
I don't know. I think you possibly started a trend or a hashtag barefoot music. You might want to copyright that.
Barefoot music. I know.
I like
Barefoot
that.
music.
I enjoy that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice and mellow stuff for when you just want to chill out.
I'm gonna use that. I'm just gonna talk to my wife and like put on some barefoot music now. enjoy. I enjoy that. Oh wow. Next question. Um,
Mhm.
how can we discover the benefits of music in our day to day?
Mhm. Again, I think letting your mood dictate what you listen to. And I am the type who, so Spotify has a great kind of discovery feature where you'll pick one song and then they'll play a bunch that sound kind of like it. I like to do that. I like to just explore and listen to new things. Every day when I'm working, I will just throw on a playlist of new music. Sometimes I've never heard of the artist. I don't even know what genre it's going to be. And I just let it play and let my mood kind of dictate, okay, I'm going to throw this on my playlist or I'm going to listen to this, that kind of thing. um, there are ways, like I said, to connect with music, and there's a song for every occasion and every mood. So I like playlists for different things, like different moods or different vibes, sometimes different days of the week or different seasons, etc. There's a song, like I said, that will speak to your mood. So I like to categorize music that way, and it can either enhance your mood or, like I said, it can encourage you to release if that's what you need. So like I said, Moses Sumney, there's a song called Doomed, and I only listen to it when I want to cry. Like or like
Yes.
Solange, a seat at the table. If I want to have a good cleansing session, I will just sit and throw that on and just bawl. Like there's music for every occasion. When I am feeling really angry and riled up about, you know, the myriad things happening in the world, I'll listen to like To Pimp a Butterfly by Kendrick Lamar, or you know, throw on some J. Cole and go for a power walk or something like that. Like there's music for every occasion. And so I look for things that either enhance my mood and help me to release whatever emotions are running through me, or
Yes.
sometimes I'll use it to kind of shield and incubate myself. Like if I need motivational music, I'll throw on Old School Sounds of Blackness, Optimistic. That one gets me every time. I get motivated and happy to that one. Like looking for things that either help me release what I'm feeling or uh, help shield me from some of the things I want to protect myself from in that moment.
Mm, that's absolutely valuable.
Hmm.
Um, I guess it's fair to say that um, words are powerful.
Absolutely. Yep.
Words translate into emotions.
Absolutely. Yep.
So you're right when you say you have to choose the appropriate music that you're listening to set the tone for yourself.
Absolutely. Yep.
And
Yep.
I think that's beautiful advice, especially for our younger generation that seem to be extremely captivated with music, and
Yeah.
especially because a good portion of the artists that they love don't live very long. If you've noticed that, like over the years, all those young artists that were up and on the rise, millions of followers, they
Yeah.
only lasted like a year or so.
Yeah.
And for us, we could think back, and some of our artists are still alive.
Yeah,
Decades
some
later.
of them, but I was
Some of
going to
them.
say that's a trend that's continued. A lot of the artists that I loved when I was growing up are no longer here as well. That's kind of a sad trend that seems to keep repeating itself. So some of the artists that are still around, I'm so happy to see them get old and get gray and you know, just become elder statesmen in the industry because we didn't have too many of our heroes last that long. So yeah, it's yeah.
Awesome. That is
Yeah.
absolutely wonderful. And thank you so much for sharing. Tasia, it looks like you're about to say something.
Oh, no, I was just here nodding my head. Yes, just agreeing.
Am I good
But
to
But again, if there's any questions for A Harmony, please write it in the chat or in our Q&A bubble. I do have a question because you touched on something and you said Kanye West. And I was just like, oh, this poor guy. He's out there literally for people to feed on him when it comes to his mental health. He's been very public about his mental health. I mean, the way he chooses how to deal with his mental health is like another situation because he is grown. So those are personal decisions that he has to make himself. But I want to kind of know more of your thoughts on like, and I'm just using him because he's the one on display right now. And more like, how healthy is it? Because we see an audience encouraging his behavior as well and what he's doing as being acceptable. He's probably the only artist. Sorry, I asked a question and then I kept going. But you see an artist who is kind of going on a downward spiral, but still making money off of it. He could still fill arenas like back to back, no problem, sell out seats. He could still sell clothes, and he hasn't lost endorsements because he's found ways to make money while kind of having this behavior okay. So what are your thoughts on, I guess, us kind of like entertaining this? Like,
yeah, it's tricky. And I've had, you know, other discussions or done other commentary on what is the role of us as spectators or consumers in terms of taking care of artists or maybe looking away when they are in crisis, that kind of thing. And there's no easy answer to that because like you said, there's a certain level of personal responsibility and accountability that comes into it. You mentioned, you know, people kind of encouraging his behavior, et cetera. And I think we have to remember that even though lots of us are learning more about mental wellness, we're not all professionals or experts. And so, you know, we can't give Kanye West the help that he needs, nor should we, you know, be weighing in on serious issues and serious disorders and things like that people need professional help with. So it's a question that is so hard to answer, but I can say that again, having people in your circle who don't have your best interest at heart can only exacerbate problems. The music industry in general, for even the most like you know, I don't want to say mentally strong, but for those of us who are like in a space of wellness most of the time, let's say that, even for us, like the music industry can be really grueling and difficult. And when you have other issues or other difficulties and there's no one around you looking out for you, making sure that you're taking time out for yourself, shielding you from the public who doesn't really have your best interest at heart when they need to, like it can only get worse, right? I think artists as big as Kanye West, who basically feed everybody around him, like they're actually making money, he is their bread and butter. That seems to be their main interest. And when that is the main interest, those people have no interest in having him stop or slow down or take time out for himself, because that represents dwindling cash on their end, right? So I think it's having a strong team around you. And unfortunately, in the music industry, it's really easy to have people who are just opportunistic and just want to feed off of you in your circle. And then you combine that with you know, fans who will never say no to you or will always buy your CD no matter what is happening on a personal level. People who will always come to the arena, etc., because they love your music and want to engage with you in that way. It's tricky. I think on the back end, on in the labels with artist management, etc., we need to start embedding more mental wellness initiatives on the back end to help artists deal with the music industry, which can the bigger and the more famous or successful you get in this industry, the worse it becomes for you on a mental level. So there need to be more people in place on the back end, more professionals who can help artists make that transition. And I think that's what's happening with like the Ari Lennox and the Summer Walkers, et cetera, of the world, who got their start online and they were just regular people. And then all of a sudden a song took off and, they have this high level of visibility and they don't feel like they've changed much, but their profile has risen and they're in a completely different space now. And there's no one at the label who's helping them make that transition. There's nobody telling Ari, maybe you shouldn't be on IG Live at the grocery store where people can see where you are and come get you. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's nobody that helps to walk them through what it's like to go from, I think Ari's real name is Courtney, like what it's like to go from Courtney to Ari and being on all the time and being a performer and how to set boundaries online. Like they're kind of fumbling their way through it. And I think one thing that can help the Kanyes and all of the other artists is having more support in place to help them make the transition and help them navigate the industry and set boundaries within it.
Andre, I don't know if you wanted to chime in and say anything on this topic or have any questions for Adrienne.
I don't. She's covering all the bases and I'm just nodding my head and agreeing because she's on point. This is her level of expertise, so she got this covered.
Another question is, what do you think is the difference between like the older generation of artists and the new artists on how they deal with mental health? Because I think something that we're seeing is accessibility, right? Social media makes people more accessible, therefore we see everything. Yeah. I'm thinking about our older artists like the Sammy Davis Juniors and the, and the Temptations and, I'm not that old, but when you think about their stories and how dirty the music industry was and how they dealt with their mental health by using substances, right? So now substances are a little bit more popular, I guess you could say.
I was going to say substance abuse in the music industry is a tale as old as time. The one thing that so accessibility is different. That's one thing that is different. And a lot of the things that happened or that artists went through used to happen behind the scenes. And there would be a whole team of people kind of sweeping the personal issues under the rug and putting them on stage every night. And we'd be none the wiser that, they would do a show and then go offline and go on a complete bender and spiral out of control. I think of like Aretha Franklin and her substance issues that I had no idea were happening behind the scenes for most of her life, and the amount of pain that she was in just on a personal level most of the time. So accessibility is one thing. I will say though, the benefit of accessibility is more people are kind of seeing behind the curtain. And I'm hoping that it's empowering some artists to either get the help that they need, or I think of like Britney Spears and the way that her fans kind of crusaded for her and kind of encouraged her to take a break and take care of her mental health, or the way that, like I said, an Ari Lennox or a Summer Walker's fan will say, you know what, take all the time you need offline. Like, we can wait on your music. We support you. It has a good side and a bad side. The bad side is some artists who are in crisis, we're seeing it kind of unfold in real time, but there are other artists who find the support that they need online. So it's a double-edged sword. I think one thing that's good about being more accessible or having our artists kind of live their lives online a little bit more is some of the substance abuse issues or physical abuse issues or things that used to happen behind the scenes can no longer hide. Think of, Rihanna, for instance, with the whole Chris Brown situation many years ago. In the old industry before the internet, we may not have even known that had happened, and it may have been a lot easier to cover up. But the internet kind of leads to like Me Too movements and people crusading for you and supporting you on your behalf. So it's a double-edged sword. We do see some artists, unfortunately, like Kanye West, who are in crisis in real time, but we also see some artists leverage these tools to support themselves mentally.
Agreed.
and I say, take us out the group chat for Kanye. I don't want to hear it. Take us out the group chat.
Mhm.
I do think for Kanye, it boils down to having a team of people who support him, because there are moments where you can't do that for yourself. Like, you may not understand that you're in crisis at the moment, or you need somebody to kind of pull you back sometimes. Sometimes we're just not strong enough or don't have the capacity to do that for ourselves. So I think having people who really have his best interest at heart, who don't care about the money, don't care if they're going to lose, several $100,000 by having him take a break for a while. You need those people around him, even
I
for
think
little
it's his
things like,
status and power. He's not an average artist. He's a billionaire. So I
well,
think
that's
it's a
the thing.
lot harder to reel a person like that
Well,
in.
that is, and
Yeah.
that's the thing.
That's-
And you have people around you who have stars in their eyes, and just like, oh my gosh, like you end up being on a whole other level where you can't really relate to a lot of people. And that is what I meant by having more support in the industry. It can be a very isolating experience when you become as big as Kanye, because there aren't that many billionaires around him, or there aren't that many people who went from working at the Gap in Chicago to now, like, being on fashion stages. Not everyone can relate to that full experience. Even with me, when I started hosting at CBC, there was a moment where I'm like, I'm becoming slightly more visible than I used to be. Even at work and things like that, people would stop me and be like, oh, I listened to your show. And like, me being a very private person, it took me a moment to kind of be able to make that transition. Thankfully, I have a therapist that I check in with once a month, who really helped usher me through that process, and was somebody that could keep me grounded as I was making that transition. So if more artists had that, because like I said, a Kanye West, how many people does he have that he can commiserate with as an equal and say like, oh my goodness, I went to the grocery store and 100 people followed me there, and before you know it, it was a mob, like, and I was so scared. Who can you really talk to that can relate to that experience, right? So having more people in place who can help usher celebrities through the very different life that they live, especially once they get to like a Jay-Z level or a Kanye level, can help a lot. Because you have people around you who try to keep you grounded, but they just don't understand, the problems of a millionaire kind of thing, or a billionaire. So it can be tricky.
I want to say thank you. Thank you for being very transparent,
Thank you.
Harmony, because just saying that you had a therapist to support you
Absolutely.
is huge.
Yeah.
Because especially for our community and culture, we just don't admit those things, or we don't access those things.
Yeah, I definitely always want to be transparent about that. I think everyone can benefit from therapy, or having someone like a professional to support them, especially, the past 2 years that we've been through with this pandemic and everything that's happening in the world. All of us can use that support. And I understand that there are barriers to access that are, very real and physical, financial barriers to access and that sort of thing. But there's also this kind of stigma. And by me being transparent, I'm hoping that I can destigmatize therapy. It's a way to help you manage the day-to-day. And I often tell people, therapy is what helps me manage people who refuse to go to therapy. Like, it helps me set boundaries with people who could benefit from therapy, but just will never go because of the stigma. But I'm always very open and transparent about that. I want to normalize that in conversation. And I mean, even Kanye in some of his albums has mentioned, sessions with his therapist and that kind of thing. I think, younger artists are a lot more transparent about mental wellness in general, and the tools that they use to help manage their mental wellness. And so, yes, I'm all for normalizing that conversation, just the same way we go to see a physical doctor. I think therapy is just as important, because our mind dictates the way that we see the world. So, going to the eye doctor, or going to the GP, or going to the therapist, it's all a part of maintenance.
Maintenance. Amen to that. Yes, thank you. Tasia.
Yes, it doesn't look like we have any more questions. So thank you so much, A Harmony, for sharing with us. We very, very much value your experience and what you've gone through, and just what's happening, because I feel like there's a lot of young people that are preparing to be artists, but know very little about what is going on behind the scenes. So
Yeah,
thank you so much for your insight.
of course. Thanks for having me. This is great.
So you can stick around because we're gonna jump over to Andre.
Yes.
So just so everybody knows, we're gonna kind of bounce from music into another topic. So just for a brief introduction before I throw it back to John, Andre Leon Chung is a 35-year-old single Black gay dad of twins residing in London, Ontario. In the fall of 2017, Andre embarked on his journey to become a single dad via surrogacy with the help of an egg donor and a surrogate. His twins were born in the summer of 2018, which he documented his journey on his YouTube channel, Single Black Gay Dad TV. Andre is a supporter of Black Lives Matter, women's rights, and the LGBTQ rights. So those matters are very close to his heart. I'm sorry. This is what you have when you have a child drumming in the background. So I don't know.
Affirmation. It's affirmation.
Parent life.
Not to be a music artist, I hope that's not it.
The drum roll introduction.
Is there
Right?
any? Did you need me to do a screen share, or were you gonna just talk, Andre?
Just gonna talk, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So, John, I'll throw it to you to throw it to Andre, and yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you for the intro. And Andre, thank you for being so patient. I can't believe you sat there silent for so long. I thought
No, she's A Harmony is very captivating. So I was just nodding and just like in it.
No, she's fantastic. But I knew there were some points when I saw your expression. I was like, say it, say it.
I couldn't have sat through anyone else. That's
awesome. So with Teja doing that wonderful intro, she said that you're a single dad of two and you're a content creator.
Also, yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Also, and in the music industry?
No, I would love to be, but I do content creation, and in my day-to-day life, I work in insurance.
Okay. And my first question is, where do you find the time? You have twins. Where do you have to, did you hear me okay?
No, I didn't hear what the first question was. No.
Oh, first question is, where do you find the time, having twins, single dad, to create?
I struggle with that at times. Like, I found that when I first had a channel, I was very consistent, and then there was a point where I stopped for a bit. Yes. And I got consistent again, and I took a break as of January. So I have to take those breaks for myself where I set boundaries, where I'm like, again, what Adrian was talking about, access, people having access to you and your everyday life and every week. Like, I was trying to be consistent with every week. And then there are times when I'm hard on myself and wonder, like, you know, like, you need to stay on top of it. Like everyone else is like, everyone else doesn't have two kids and work a full-time job and take care of their kids full-time every day, all day. So I'm like, you have to take those, like, set those boundaries with everyone who expects so much from you, and say, I'm tired, or I'm not in the mood, or I'm not in a creative space to create in that way, and set those boundaries where you take time off for yourself and do those things for yourself, to make sure that you are who you need to be for yourself and for your children and for your job and all your other responsibilities.
Yes, I can imagine, especially when it comes to curating and developing your YouTube page, because that is something that is visual. And I find with music, as we were talking previously with Harmony, you can give yourself a pause and continue again. But with YouTube, it seems that you have to be fairly frequent in order just to keep the attention span and stuff like that.
And I did feel that pressure. A lot of people say, "Oh, if you miss a few weeks, you'll lose your followers. You lose that." And I'm like, that's fine. My mental health needs to be where it needs to be. I need to be in a creative space. I'm an artist in that way. Like, a content creator is a form of an artist. And when you're creating, you have to be in your best mindset in order to give the best possible content. If you're just putting stuff out because you're being a robot and you're just doing it because you feel that you are obligated to, you're not going to give your best work. And for me, I have to be in that space. I have to be excited. And I'm a person where I'm passionate. Yes. I have to feel passionate about what I'm putting out and feel proud about it. Everyone else can love it or not like it, but I have to love it if I'm putting it out and it's attached to my name.
Yes.
So
completely agree with that. For myself, I sometimes do t-shirt design and I do music production. And I find that in order for me to create, I have to have the appropriate space to
You have
start
to.
unraveling those
You have
thoughts, right? And
Mhm.
just to get yourself in the mood to really create instead of forcing it like you just said.
Yeah.
So what would your typical space be like for you to create your best?
I have to just be calm. I have to be excited. For me, the excitement is what gets me motivated because then I have ideas, like fresh ideas, and the juice is flowing, and I'm like, okay, I want to do this. I want to try this, and it's usually something that motivates me to try something that I haven't tried before, which
Yes.
keeps me interested. Where I'm like, okay, I want to learn how to edit it this way or do that way. Or if I saw something that motivated me, where I'm like, that's really dope. How did they do that? Let me find a way to put my own spin on it and like use those things as inspiration. I have to be inspired and feel motivated to do it and give it my best. And also feedback from people who enjoy my content makes you feel like, because even as a content creator or anyone who's on social media, period, you have those moments where you don't feel like your work is being received in the way that you want it to be received, and you don't think it's making an impact at all. And then when you have those moments where people come to you and say, you know what, your content really helped me. It really gave me the answers that I needed, or I love that video that you did, or it brightened my day. Things like that at times as a content creator or as an artist in any form, when you think that your work has no impact and people come to you and say, you know what, that changed my life or that changed my
Yes.
day. You're like, you know what, I can keep going. When you have those moments where you're not feeling at your best and you don't feel like it makes a difference and anyone notices it, it makes you really realize that your work does make an impact and that you can definitely make a difference and brighten someone's day or give them the knowledge they're looking for or give them the motivation that you don't always have.
That's interesting. Is there a particular theme or signature that you have when you create your stuff?
I love modern, and as you can tell by my couch, I love the color yellow. So I usually
Mm.
try and stick to some kind of theme. Like themes to me are very important. So I always try to have an idea of where I want to go with something, and then go down that path so that it makes sense. It's cohesive.
Yes.
Because content creation is storytelling, just like being an artist or a singer, rapper. You're telling a story.
Yep.
So you want to make sure the story makes sense and it's not just strewn together. And that, and like for me, when I see something or I hear something or I watch something, I want it to be cohesive and for me to tell that the creator had an idea and they put it together and it wasn't just a bunch of clips that were thrown together.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I could see that in terms of just creating that storyline to create
Yeah.
this visual for people to digest and to kind of unpack, which
And
is
to keep
really
it
cool.
interesting. Keep them
Yeah.
captivated.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Previously, we just mentioned that you're a dad of two, you're a single dad. Do you mind telling us in terms of your journey into surrogacy as a single Black gay dad?
Sure. So when I embarked on my journey, which was in 2017, I didn't know anyone that looked like me that did it. Like when I went on YouTube, I'd see white gay couples. I didn't know anyone that was a single dad who was embarking on that. In fact, when I even went to my clinic to start my my process, they hadn't even encountered someone single. They're like, okay, you need a surrogate, you need an egg donor. Like they always encounter people in one situation or another. But my situation, to my knowledge at the time, was something that they've never done before. So that was, it gave me a lot of anxiety because I'm like, I'm embarking on something that no one else can tell me if this is gonna work. Even when I see Black gay people doing it, they're usually couples. It's very rare that someone is a single person who wants to embark on a journey like this and go out to have twins of all things. So a lot of people, when I first started the journey, they were like, are you crazy? Like, why would you want to have two kids at once and you're by yourself and all those things? And I didn't have all the answers, and everything that I was doing was for the very first time. I had no one to call up and be like, hey, how did this work when you did this and when you did that? And then when I went through it and I went through the trials and errors and the mistakes that I made and stuff through the journey, I was able to be connected with my surrogate and egg donor, and luckily everything worked out great. Both ladies, myself, got along really well. We are still in touch to this day. We're really good friends. And after going through the journey, I started to have people reach out to me and say like, hey, how did you do this? How much did this cost? Where did you go for this? Where did you go for that? And I'm like, hey, I would have loved to have resources when I was going through it for the first time, when I went through it. And that's what inspired me to start my YouTube channel, because I was like, you know what? I keep getting asked the same questions over and over. I might as well document it, put it in one place. So if someone comes to me, I can talk to them, counsel them, or just refer them to my channel, which will answer a lot of questions that they may have. And they can come to me and fill in the gaps if there's anything that's missing for them.
Yes. Yes. No, that would be important to share that journey, because I'm sure there's others who would be interested and would face challenges also. And to be able to have access to those resources and have that conversation is powerful. Moving into this next question, would you mind sharing in terms of your coming out story to your family, to those close to you?
Sure. It was very traumatic because I think at the time when it happened, I was 16 and I wasn't ready yet. So it was more of being forced out. Like everyone knew, they could tell that I was different. I was not the typical teenager. So everyone suspected, but I wasn't in a place of acceptance in myself. So I finally got to a place where I felt confident enough to tell 3 or 4 girls that I was close with at the time. I told them in confidence. And that was hot gossip. They took that, and by, like I told them in the beginning of the school day, and by the end of the school day, the whole entire high school knew like my business. And it was traumatic because it was like everyone was whispering. And then the other issue is my sister went to the same high school. So she told my cousin, which told her grandmother, which told my grandmother. And before, like, I wasn't just outed at school that day, I was outed at home too. So as you know, from a Caribbean upbringing, that's not widely accepted. And especially at that time, I think the world's moving to a way more acceptable place where it's not the end of the world for most families. But at that time, it was very taboo. There wasn't gay characters on TV. There was no resources for my family to even know how to deal with something like that or how to react to that type of news. So I went from being outed at school. I had friends that I thought were friends that stopped talking to me. I had some guy friends that we were really cool before it came out. And then when it came out, it was like they moved their desks from one side of the classroom beside me to the other side to separate and distance themselves from me totally. And then that same day, my grandmother also found out, who told my mother, and I was like panicked. I was like, does this mean they're gonna kick me out? Like, because I knew it wasn't something they accepted. So it was a very traumatic time. And looking back now, I thought I was weak, but looking back at that time, I realized how strong I was because at that time, looking back, you see how you understand why there's such a high rate of suicides for gay and bisexual and transgender teens. Because when you're gonna lose your whole world and lose everything that you thought you had and people that you thought loved and accepted you, you don't have many other options. And for me, I don't know where I found the strength, but I think I had like a fake it to make it mentality. I was like, you know what? They don't support you. You got to learn to love you. And that's when I started to build myself up and start to learn myself and work on my mental health, set my boundaries, and be confident. And then it went from the insecurities of I'm gay, is that okay with you, to this is who I am. You either need to accept it or not be in my space. And that's where the transition into who I became started to come about as my confidence grew and as I started to learn to love myself a lot more and stuff while I was going through that journey.
Okay. You just explaining how when you decided to come out, everything happened so abruptly. As soon as you shared it with some friends, and it spread like wildfire, and all from school all the way to home in both spaces that were safe for you, all of a sudden transitioned into spaces that
We're
were
no longer
safe. How did you deal with your mental health? I know you were saying that you don't know where you found the strength from, but what do you feel that you needed to do in order to maintain your sanity, first of all?
I think I retreated a lot to myself. And I think that was why I started to build up certain walls and have lack of trust, because when the trust that you had for everyone crumbles in one day, every safe space that you thought you had with your group of friends, they betrayed you, your family betrayed you, everywhere you went and you felt like you were an army of one and everyone was against you. I think that I started to retreat to myself. Like I knew around that time I started to be very depressed. Like I would lock myself in my room for weeks at a time. Like I wouldn't really talk to anyone. I'd come straight home and I'd go into my room because that was literally my only safe space, not at school, not at the rest of my house, literally just my room. So I think that I started to retreat to myself, and then I started to learn a lot more about myself and the things that I started to like and the things that interested me and kept me going. And I think that that's what turned into my mentality now, where I see the world with a glass half full. I always look at the good and the positivity in things in order to keep going. Because I feel like once you have a void of hope, there's no hope in your life. How do you keep going? So I always think like, I think what kept me going at that time and dealing with my mental health was knowing that things will get better. I didn't know how, I didn't know what the plan was, but I just knew that things have to be better than this. This cannot be my story. This can't be the end.
Yeah.
So I knew that like if I kept going, that one day I would be where I wanted to be.
Yeah. No, that's very powerful to just to have that frame of thinking, especially at a young age, to think to yourself,
yeah,
this is bad, but it can't stay this way. And that's really important because as you said, there's many young people that are in that position, and unfortunately they kind of choose suicide because it's too overwhelming. Right?
Exactly.
Was there a duration of time where friends and family members started to support you?
I think the support from me truly came when I didn't want it, if that makes sense. Like I wasn't asking for it. I think when I gave them an option, like, is it okay with you? It was like, I don't like this. And then when I was very forceful in it, like, this is who I am. And I was prepared to walk away from my entire family, even my mother. I was prepared, like, if you don't accept me for who I am, I'm okay living my life without you in it. So I think once it was phrased in a way that they didn't, where I took the power away from them, they had no other choice. It was deal with me as I am or not. And I didn't allow them that choice. I think with that, they started to come around eventually. Once I start to love myself. And I think I always say, like, confidence is everything. Like, you may not be the best looking person, you may not have the most money in the world, but if you believe you're the ish, everyone else will start to believe it too. And I think that like once people saw how I love myself, they saw my confidence, they saw my intelligence, my drive, they had no choice but to pivot their thought process, because who I am as a gay person is a small sector of who I am as a person. I'm a great dad, I'm a great friend, I'm a great son. Me being gay is a minuscule part of who I am. So I think that like once they start to see my confidence build in who I am and the person that I am and the value that I bring to their lives, I feel like they had no other option but to accept who I was, because they knew that without accepting me, they would lose a great person that they have.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned there is like Murphy's Law with family. When you ask for help, no one wants to help you. Some people turn a blind eye. They don't want, but as soon as you show yourself as being very confident, say, you know what, I don't need your help. That's okay. The phone will ring. And it's interesting. It's Murphy's Law really works that way. But I'm glad it did shift in that way, because as we were saying before, the family support sometimes isn't always there.
It isn't,
right?
yeah.
Let me see, was there a question? Let me just take a look. One moment. Expand my screen. No, none in the question and answer. Okay. As a parent that identifies as within the LGBTQ community, what are some of the experiences like going to different spaces and stuff like that?
I get a mixed bag. So I get judgments like, you're crazy to be a single parent has twins, when that is a misconception, because I was very adamant about having my community and my help and the support. Once I had kids, I wasn't just going to be a single parent. I made sure that I fortified my community, as in terms of my mother helped me out a lot in the beginning. So did my siblings. My siblings literally took time off work and held off going to school to help me full time with the twins when they were a lot younger. So I had a lot of support, a lot more support than many of my straight counterparts usually have in the very beginning. So I made sure I had a strong community that helped me out with my kids. So I do get a mixed bag. So I get the people who are, when they just think it's just me, they're like, you're crazy, how can you do this? And then I get the other side who are like, wow, like, Because I think in society, the role that the father has in some households is he's hands off. He pays the bills. He'll show up at events and be there, but he's not there. He's in the home, but he's not present. So I think when they see a present father who takes on both roles as a mother and father, and takes care of the kids primarily, and is as attentive as I am, and on the ball, and going to doctor's appointments, dentist appointments, doing everything by myself, they're like, wow, like there's no one else that does these things with you. You're doing this by yourself, and it's completely just you. So I think that the type of person that I am as a parent, it shifts the perception in terms of the involvement that people think that fathers should have or do have. And I think that, like, I get the mixed bag. I get, you're crazy, or I get, wow, like you're doing this all by yourself, and like no one's helping you, and those different things. I get a mixture of both, but overall it's been very positive, and it's been inspiring to a lot of people who otherwise didn't think they could do it, because a lot of people, it obviously, seeking to be a single parent is not the ideal situation that anyone woke up to and wanted to do. But I think that me living my truth, living my life, and being happy the way that I am, and loving my children, and also not letting parenthood be the only thing that defines me. I have very many other interests, like traveling and content creation and different things like that. I think when people see that I'm able to be a parent, be a single parent, and also maintain those other things, areas of my life that bring me happiness and joy, I think it inspires other people who haven't yet met that partner that they want to meet. Say, you know what? I would love to do this with a partner, but I see that Andre can do it by himself, and maybe I'm not gonna, that love story that I thought that I would have, or at this point it hasn't yet occurred. Right. I can do what he's doing. If I want to be a parent, I don't have to choose between being a single person and being married and a parent. Like they can take their own life into their hands and say, you know what, I want to be a parent, and Mr. Right hasn't come along. I'm going to do this now. I have the resources to do this, and I'm going to do it. And I think that, like, my story inspires people to take their life by the bullhorn and do what they need to do.
Yes. No, that is extremely valuable information there, in terms of being able just to take ownership over your journey and being confident about it, but also
Yes.
Being flexible in terms of, if there comes a point where you can see yourself having a partner in your life, and then building the family and stuff like that, for sure.
Afterwards, yeah.
Do you feel that there is challenges for Black people in general within the LGBTQ community?
Absolutely. There's challenges in terms of being in corporate Canada. There's challenges in terms of becoming a parent in itself. Like, I simplified my story, but there's so many roadblocks. A lot of people say, oh, why don't you just adopt? I'm like, do you know how hard it is in many countries or provinces or states to adopt as a single person, much less a gay person?
Yes.
Even in terms of you wanting to have your own biological child, like the barriers that come in terms of finding a surrogate. In Canada, it's not easy to find a surrogate. They're very few, far in between, versus the people that need them. Then when you do find the surrogate, you have the additional barriers of, is this person going to donate their body to assist me because I'm LGBTQ? Right. Those are the types of discriminatory things that you encounter at times. Like, I encountered several egg donors who refuse to donate to either single people or LGBTQ. And I'm not downing them for that, because that's their right. If you're donating your own specimens, you have the right to determine who is the recipient of those things. But I'm saying that those are various different barriers that you encounter even as a gay person when you go through those different things. So there's barriers in terms of healthcare. There's barriers in terms of becoming a parent. Like the simple things that a lot of other people who are in a state of in a position of privilege take for granted. It's 10 times harder when you're dealing with different things. Like there's ways you can be discriminated against in terms of whether you want to get a cake from certain places or certain businesses that you want to access. They may deny you access because of your orientation. So you may be denied certain jobs because of it, or certain perceptions. Even when I got my current position, my boss is great, but I think a perception is, if you're hiring a male or you're hiring someone who's gay, you're thinking, this person is not going to start a family, so I'm going to have this person for a very long time. When I started my current job, my surrogate was already pregnant. So I had to keep it a secret until I passed probation in order to tell her, like, hey, I'm expecting twins. And she was happy for me, but I'm sure that a part of her or the company was like, we wouldn't have expected this. It's the different perceptions that occur when you are LGBTQ, like that you don't want certain things or certain things are not available to you. And then when you do come up with those things, it's like, wow, like he's a male that's taking paternity leave for a year. Like it's things that they would have never thought that they would have encountered.
Yes, no, that makes sense because, yeah, you're right in terms of people will have their own preference in terms of where they want who they want the surrogate to be and stuff like that. So yeah, you're right. You're right. There is going to be those type of challenges, and I'm sure it could be quite difficult to navigate through because then you're going to have to find someone that is in agreement in terms of just your lifestyle and who you are, being Black, being male, all those other pieces also too.
There's so many things.
Yeah, I can imagine. And also just dealing with the work thing because it's true when you are hired, they make the assumption that you are going to be one particular way. And then if you throw something kind of in the mix, because once you have children, you have to go on maternity or paternity leave. And that kind of shifts things a little bit because they anticipate not you being there all the time and not having to pay out for that. So there's different pieces there. Yeah.
Exactly. It's a misconception. I think my story and the way that I've lived my life and the decisions that I made I may not realize it at this moment, but I think it's breaking down so many barriers and changing so many different mindsets and letting people know that gays are not a monolith. We're not all non-parents or we have certain wants and needs that are very similar. Like we all are one and the same in terms of our like us being humans and the different desires that we have, and we're all not a monolith in terms of what the public's perception of many of us are.
Yes. Well said. Yeah. And do you find that within the LGBTQ community is wellness and mental health, is that an important resource? Is there a lot of access to things like that?
I don't think so. I think that like I know in Toronto there are organizations that are geared towards Black LGBTQ plus. So there are those types of resources, but in terms of the emphasis on the community having that, I don't think overall I think it just like the Caribbean community is swept in the rug. I think the Caribbean community sweeps in the rug for religious reasons, where they just say pray on it. You don't need therapy, pray on it. Whereas the gay community, I think it's very taboo. There are many times where, like, even in my community, I could think of many people who are obviously having mental breakdowns, or they're not taking care of their mental health, or they're turning to drugs and alcohol to cope with their issues instead of dealing with it in other more holistic ways, like going to therapy or getting to the root cause of what the issues are. So I think it's very taboo where we're aware of those things as a culture. I think it's very taboo because some people are not ready to own their truth and hear those types of feedbacks. And I think it's also the crowd and the friends that you keep, because I don't have those issues with my immediate friends, but I know that there are other groups that are like that, and the whole group is like that. So when you have a whole group who is deep in your addiction, and everyone's in the same situation, they're all going to enable you and allow that to be the normalcy in that situation. Whereas if you have friends that are not into those types of things, they'll tend to either distance themselves or try and get you the help that you need or point you in the right direction to get the help that you need.
Yes. Yeah, makes total sense. And yeah, it sounds very similar in terms of the Caribbean community and Afro-Canadian community in terms of the stigma that is present. And it's really difficult to find sometimes the resources that are appropriate, right? That are very supportive in terms of your mental wellness, and for it to be very promoted strongly. So yeah, sounds
Exactly.
very similar. What advice would you give those looking for mental health support in general?
I think there are very many resources that you can Google. There are, like, especially in gay communities, like a lot of these things tend to set up shop where it's needed. The gay communities in Toronto, Church Street, different things like that. If you are fortunate enough to have gay elders, or as we call them, like house fathers or mothers, they can obviously lead you into that right direction. And if there's anyone that you trust overall, I don't think it necessarily needs to be a gay thing. I think that as a society, we're being a lot more aware and cognizant of mental health issues. So just reaching out and telling someone that you need help. And sometimes people can see that you need help, like whether it be a cry for help online, on social media. There are times where you see certain posts and a good human being who's empathetic will come to you and be like, hey, are you okay? Just simple things like that. Just asking someone if they're okay. And if they're not okay and they're honest with you enough where they're transparent with you about what their issues are, what's plaguing them and bothering them, you giving them the resources or giving them the number to call or a website or a resource to look into in order to deal with those different issues. So I think just having a listening ear, whether it be a person who's gay, just a person of color in general who's in distress, because I think that being a person of color, period, comes with its own set of issues. Then you add the gay on top of that and everything else on there. It's just constant PTSD and different things that we're all navigating, especially being in the middle of a pandemic. Mental health for a lot of people has been declining during this time. So just being aware and just listening and knowing the people around you well enough to know when they're not quite right, and giving them the resources or even the listening ear. Sometimes just a listening ear and just being there for someone, letting them know, like, I got you, is enough. And if that's not enough, then being there with them while they navigate those issues and get to where they get the help that they need. Yes,
no, absolutely valid.
Can I come in there with another resource? Sorry, for mental health support. Schools are often overlooked as well in terms of mental health resources. There are a lot of schools with psychology programs with students who are studying their practicum and actually need to fulfill a certain amount of hours of real practice, and they're always supervised by a licensed professional. So that is a really good resource to tap into. I know when I was in university, I took great advantage of my school's psychology department, and you can get therapy sessions for free or next to nothing financially. So it's a good way to circumvent the financial barrier to seeking mental health support. Just wanted to chime in there. I don't want to take away from...
Yes.
Thank you so much, Harmony. That is very valuable. Schools do have beautiful resources. There's also there's an Afrocentric school in the west end of the city that also has some valuable resources too, in terms of supporting young people for their wellness and stuff like that. In terms of content creating, has it helped you share your story or just share your journey in general?
In terms of, you said?
In terms of sharing your journey?
It's helped a lot of people, inspire a lot of people. And I used to think it was just a gay thing, but I think overall I have female cisgender friends who are not where they want to be in terms of romance, and they are considering going at the journey like I did also. So I think it's just inspiring overall, just seeing a person like me who wanted to become a parent and didn't allow the barriers that were set up in place to stop me from doing that get in my way. So I think that has inspired many people to look at their own situation and see like the things that they want, and to see that they have the power to look into those things or go ahead and with certain things that otherwise wouldn't have been an option probably 20 years ago.
Yeah. Yep. A question to the both of you. During this pandemic, whatever you want to title it, did it encourage you both to do some reflection just in regards to where you're currently at in life?
Absolutely. It made me really reevaluate work-life balance. I think before the pandemic, I think we all were in the hamster wheel of just thinking that you have to live to work. And then I think being at home and having a lot more time to ourselves, not being stuck in 3-hour commutes daily, being forced interactions with people in the office who are toxic, and just that toxic culture in certain companies have inspired us to really think about the things that we want in our lives and made us realize that, like, at least for me, that I need a more hybrid work arrangement where I have a lot more flexibility and my work-life balance is a priority. As for where before it was more of you felt like it was a privilege if you got to work from home. Now it's like it's a requirement. It's made me realize that I don't want to be in the office 5 days a week anymore. That doesn't serve me mentally. I think that I've benefited from having a lot more time at home with my children, and I can't see it any other way. And unfortunately for these employers, like a lot of other people feel the same way. And now that we've been accustomed to putting ourselves first and not spending 8 hours a day where you're stuck at the computer and just working in the meetings all day, and having the time to throw a load of laundry in or start your dinner while you're working, we're not going to go back to where we were in. And I think that it forced me to reevaluate and set more boundaries, even with my employer. As Adrian mentioned earlier, not taking emails after a certain period of time, not being available when you're off the clock. Certain things like that, you have to set those boundaries in order to make sure you put your mental health first. Because if you were to drop dead tomorrow, they would have you replaced before you're even in the ground. So you have to always put yourself and your family first, and the job comes secondary to all of that.
I enjoy that. I like that. And
Yeah, in
Harmony.
terms of reflecting, yes, I did get a lot of time to reflect during the pandemic. I think for me, it also helped to foster deeper connections and help me to take stock of the people in my life. You know, a lot of people went through this during the pandemic where certain friendships, they just kind of either outgrew or they fell away, and other connections became a lot closer because people started you know, being more open with each other and being more vulnerable and just sharing more. So it was helpful for me in that way, and that it helped me take stock the same way it helped Andre kind of take stock of his work-life balance and what was happening at work. There was a bit of that for me, but there was also just personal relationships. Some got closer, some kind of fell away, but it gave me an opportunity to become closer and more vulnerable with certain people, and take stock of how much of my energy I was giving away to connections that didn't really serve me. So it helped with that for sure, to just turn inward and build a stronger circle of friends, even though it may have gotten smaller. Really, it tested a lot of connections that I had for the better, I think.
Yes, the both of you said things that absolutely resonated with me. Andre, especially when you said, just being in front of that computer for such a long period of time and not being able just to disconnect and do other things is so important. I believe I have like adult ADD or something because I can't sit still.
Yeah, I can't. I realized, like, after, like, during the pandemic, I'm
Yes.
like, I don't know how I was doing this before. Like, I literally cannot more than an hour or two. I'm like, I need to get up. I need to go for a walk. I need to do something. Like,
Yes. Yes. Right. And Harmony, what you said in regards to now understanding who to share your energy with is powerful, because it's still happening right now with me and with certain people that I had to choose to let go. I didn't want to, but I understood that I was just putting too much energy in keeping that connection. And I
Yeah.
believe that if you allow it to go, and if it's meant to come back, it will.
Yeah.
But it was really important just to let go and to reflect on who do I need to really share this energy with. Really powerful. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, it just encouraged people to be a lot more deliberate with how much time they're spending at work versus spending time with family, being deliberate about, you know, who they chose to connect with, especially during times of isolation where it presented a physical health risk to just be giving your energy or meeting up with everybody. You have to become a lot more selective about who you were going to take those risks for. So being a lot more deliberate, and that is something that I kind of picked up during the pandemic that I don't think I'm going to let go. I think going forward, I'm just going to be a lot more deliberate with everything that I do, the things that I say, the things that I do, the work projects that I take on. In general, the amount of work that I'm doing, the friends that I'm connecting with, just being a lot more mindful about all of that.
Yep. Well said. Well said. Absolutely. Tasia.
I'm here. I actually had a question for Andre, which is, how do you think our young people that identify as LGBTQ plus are doing in terms of basically, yeah, just how do you think they're doing in terms of, I don't want to say like their mental health or wellness, but how do you think they're doing in terms of being more comfortable to express themselves, I guess, in comparison to your journey, which was like yesterday. So did not to put no age
I
on
think
you.
that they have, yeah. I don't want to diminish and say that they have it easy, like how our parents would say, like back in the day, you guys have it easy compared to what we had. I don't want to say that, but I think that with a lot more visibility, with a lot more LGBTQ plus characters on TV, and it not being so taboo and hush as it was when I was coming out and before me, the generations before me, I think that it's not as much of a big deal as it was when I was coming out, where it was like world stop. Now I think for some people, when they come out, we don't miss a beat. There's been very many artists who have come out recently as bisexual or gay, and it didn't ruin their career as it would have in the past. The world didn't stop. Like, it may have been an article, a 15-minute news cycle, but it wasn't a huge taboo like it would have been back then. So I think that's the young LGBTQ plus coming out now have it a lot more. They have a lot more acceptance on their side. They have a lot more working in their favor that we didn't have as the older generations. So I do think that even though they may have barriers within their family, I think as a society in North America, it's a lot more widely acceptable. And if it's not in their family, they have a lot more resources and shelters that are geared towards children and teens in those situations that they can access that they didn't necessarily have when we were growing up. When we were growing up and we got kicked out for being gay, we had to form our own gay houses where older generations of gays would take us in and raise us as our own family. I think now there's a lot more LGBTQ plus shelters and different resources that weren't available when we were coming out and dealing with that.
Yeah, I was doing some research the other day and noticed that we're still kind of young in terms of the acceptance of those who identify in the LGBT community. I was watching a program. It was probably like 10 years old. Hold on. The years are going by so fast. I'm going to say 10 to 12 years old. And I remember how taboo it was just in the Black community to have those discussions, to say, oh, did you know this artist is gay? And then people would be like, oh my gosh. And even just like the slang that we use, even the word gay, right? When we were younger, it kind of transformed into this, nice magical word of the 50s and 40s, right? Splendid and gay. And then we kind of use it as like a derogatory term, like, oh, that's so gay, right? Like we're kind of like stripping away some of the negative connotation to what it is, but it's very new, especially in television. I feel like they're just identifying that it has nothing to do with a trend. And I think before people were trying to put it as a trend opposed to someone's like real lifestyle, like this is affecting people daily.
Representation matters. And I think that because we've grown up just seeing a lot of just white heterosexual characters and whatnot, like I think representation matters. I think that when the Asian community sees themselves in a blockbuster film for the very first time, we have an issue. Like when like children see themselves in cartoons and see the kinky hair that represents them, like representation matters. And I think that even though certain people get upset in the heterosexual community, they get upset like, oh, they're turning all these characters gay, and it's like, and I can understand the frustration, but at the same time, could you imagine growing up and not seeing you anywhere? I remember when I came out, I'm 35 now, and when I came out, I was like 15, so that was 20 years ago. At that time, when I first came out, I thought I was the only gay person in the world. I know that sounds extremely funny. You're like, why would you think that? there was nothing. There was no chat groups to go to. Even knowing where the gay club downtown in Toronto was, that was like very hush hush. It was like the Underground Railroad. Like no one knew where it was. It was literally in a back alley somewhere in a basement. Like that's where we've come from, hiding in the shadows, not seeing ourselves anywhere, not being able to date. There was no apps to go on. Like I, from the generation of MSN, Messenger, and AOL chat. Back then, I'm dating myself. But back then, even finding groups where there was people like me, that didn't exist. So when I came out, I felt like I was the only person in the world until I met my friend in high school who was similar to me. We had a similar story. We bonded because we had that in common. It was like, oh, and then when I got to know him, he introduced me to some more people. I'm like, there's more people that are like us. It sounds crazy, but 20 years ago, that was our reality. We didn't have Tinder and dating apps and Grindr to go on and find someone. Like that didn't exist back then. And it seems so long ago, but it was literally yesterday.
And for those that are in the chat, if there's any questions, again, you can write them in the chat or put it in the Q&A bubble. I don't know if there's any last thoughts for anyone here before we wrap up. I'm going to take that as a no.
I think we
Okay.
covered everything.
No, there's always something new, right? Like there's
Right.
always something. And these two topics are very different, but very much the same, because
Yeah.
these are topics that affect us in the Black community. I mean, for what A Harmony was talking about, there was so much things that popped into my head, but I was like, she only got an hour. We can't talk about what's happening in the TikTok universe when it comes to music. And for yourself, Andre, like there's just so much in general. There's so much history that we're not taught about in the Black community, especially like the Marsha P. Johnsons that are transforming what the community looks like. I learned about Marsha P. Johnson only because of COVID, to be honest.
Yeah, I saw the documentary and that's when I got to know the story.
That's exactly.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah.
I never knew this person existed, yet alone in, the early like 1980s, right? Because it was something that was so hidden and it wasn't supposed to exist. But now we're in a place where we can actually give credit to those that, revolutionized and changed the history for not just Black folks, but for all folks.
Yeah, we have to big up our ancestors, for me, Black and gay, who fought for my right to exist now. Without both groups, I wouldn't have the right to exist without persecution. And I know that a lot of people take that for granted, but that is the reality. If our ancestors didn't stand up, we would still be in slavery. Like those ideals that were put in place would still be in place if the brave souls that some are here and no longer here weren't brave enough to stand up and just were okay with the status quo. We would still be in the same situation we're in, and we're still fighting to this day for more equal rights in terms of women and gays still. But we've come a long way in terms of where we were, and we have to give a shout out to our ancestors, because if not for them, we would still be where we were.
Most definitely. Hey, Harmony, any last thoughts?
No last thoughts for me. I think everybody covered everything. This has been a great discussion. I think we covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, so thank you so much to the both of you. We truly, truly appreciate it. We love hearing Andre speak. Andre, we asked you to come here so many times now. We're gonna give you an award soon.
I don't mind.
We're gonna give you a certificate for all the time you talk for us. And this is A Harmony's first time, and I thank you so much, A Harmony, for coming out. We don't talk a lot about the influence of music in our culture, but it's definitely a topic we need to talk more about, because it seems to be something that is resonating right now. So for those that are left in attendance, please continue to follow us. We will have these videos saved, and please follow us on our social media at Kujenga Wellness Project, and visit us on our website, www.kujengawellness.org. So everyone have a great night, and thank you all again for coming out. It was absolutely amazing.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And thank the both of you